Hello, hello. Happy Friday. Satan Petak. I am Sarah of Expat in Croatia, and this is 5 Question Friday. Every Friday at 5 o'clock Croatia time, I answer 5 questions about Croatia from people who have sent them in on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, expatinCroatia.com, email, our consulting sessions, and people who hide them in the Sunday crossword puzzle. So, hi, how are you? Thank you so much for being here. I am at Turska in Split. So Turska Kula, that's kind of like an old name that they call it. It's not what's on the map. On the map, it says Park Mladosti, which Park Mladosti actually encompasses a few different things. So there's this like big forested hill. And then next to it, there is the Park Mladosti Sports Complex. That's where the other football team that is not Hajduk plays. So if you are familiar with Split, I'm going to give you a little bit of context of where I am if you don't know where Turska Kula is. And let me just explain what Turska Kula is. Turska Kula means Turkish tower. And the reason that it's called that is because at one time there was a tower here that was used to defend this area against the Turks. But that tower does not exist anymore. So they have events here. I went to a festival here called Ego Free a few years ago that was amazing. So anyways, like I said, I'm going to give you a little bit of context. So this direction is Poljud Stadium. This direction is Kaštela in the mountains. This direction is Joker Mall. That direction is the city center of Split and Mup. You pass Mup first on this side. So I'm just going to quickly give you a little tour, all right? So let me hop off this rock and do that. Oof! So, as I said, let me lift you back up. So this direction is Poljud. Now, it's pretty bright, so I don't know if you'll be able to see Poljud through the trees or not, but I'm sure gonna try. So there it is. It's kind of like on the edge here. Let me see if I'm a little bit further. Yeah, there. See that little bit? That's Poljud Stadium. That's the Bazin, the pool next door. Our office is actually just down this hill, just down here. Those are the mountains up there by Kaštela. And then this is where I am. So this is where they have a lot of the events. And I'm perched up here on this rock. So let's go right back over here. By the way, how do you like my hair? I just came from the hairstylist, and I dig it. And, you know, with this crazy humidity we're having, I did not know if it was going to survive a half hour before I got to talk to you guys. All right. Let me get everything back in place. Oh, hi, Auntie. Thank you so much. So, I'm not paid to say this. I'm saying it because I love my hairstylist so much. I've been going to her for 11 years. Her name is Angela, and I'm so impressed by what she's done because when I started going to her, she was like a 2-chair salon in the palace in this tiny, tiny, tiny hole in the wall, which if you're familiar with Split, you know where D16 is. Like 2 doors down to the right, there was this little tiny, tiny place. In fact, her sign is still there, and it's never been anything since. But since then, she's moved, and now she has like a 2-story salon. She has like a fleet of people that work there, and she opened up a second location last year. It's just so impressive, and it's proof that you can grow a small business here in Croatia. So I love her, and the name of her salon is Frame Beauty Habitat. I actually heard through the grapevine recently, a lot of foreigners go to her, but she's wonderful, and she did this. So, all right, so let me tell you a couple of things before we get started. You know, I really wanted to say today, hey guys, I'm not like melting and sweating today like I was last Friday, but that would be a lie. But I'm trying to tell you guys about what Croatia is like, and it is August, and it is Split, and this is what Croatia is like. So, the humidity is real. Okay, So I wanted to first give a shout out to Michael Freer. He has been on this program a number of times, and he is a very good friend of Expat in Croatia, and he had a birthday this week. So please join me in wishing Michael Freer Sretan rođendan from all of us here at Expat in Croatia. Okay, so we had a big update on this military situation this week. Well, not a big update, but an update nonetheless, and I think it's important. So I want to go ahead and shout it out. I know we put it out on stories, but in case you missed that, I want to mention it. So they have announced that the Ministry of Defense has announced that they've decided that mandatory military service is only going to be 2 months. So they were trying to decide between 2 and 3 months. They decided on 2 months, which means if you decide you want to opt out of that military service, then it's going to be twice as long for civil service. So that would be 4 months. We still do not know how they're going to treat Croatian citizens abroad yet, but as soon as we know, we're going to tell you. But it's really important that we do not get our facts from Facebook groups or rumor. We have to confirm them with real actual sources. So I know there's a lot of things floating around out there, but we only want to give you what is true and accurate and verified with the Ministry of Defense. So once we have more information, we're going to tell you, okay? Okay. So also, I mentioned this last week, but I would like to mention again. So September 6th, I'm going to be moderating an event for the Association of Croatian American Professionals in Zagreb. And as part of this event, it's all built around the new U.S. Ambassador, Natalie Reyes. She was appointed at the beginning of the year, and I will be emceeing the event, but also I will get to interview her, which is a huge honor and privilege. We're working on an interview right now, myself, my colleague Maria, and my colleague Tamara helping me out with that. So yay, I'm pretty excited about that. So if you're an ACAP member, it is open to you for free. If you are not an ACAP member, but you would like to join and get access to all of our events and benefits and professional networking, it's actually a really affordable organization to join. It's only $100 US dollars per year, $25 for students. And you don't have to be Croatian or American to be in it. So if you'd like more information about that, send us a DM and we can send you a link to the event or a link to become a member. So also, I went to a concert this week. And the concert was for a musician called Željko Joksimovic, and he almost won Eurovision like 20 years ago. I was told he lost by like 2 points to Ukraine. And I didn't know who this person was, and my friend is a huge fan. And when I went, it was on Park Sustipan, which I've done 5 Question Friday from there a number of times. I really love it. If you're ever in Split, you should go and check it out. It's a little bit more off the beaten path, but it's only walking distance, maybe 20 minutes from the city center. So anyway, so that's where the concert was. And sometime during summer, they have concerts on Sustipan. And I think that every woman in Split between 25 and 50 was there. I was amazed. It would not surprise me if there were 2,000 people at the park for this concert. But I loved it, and he played for 2 hours. And even though I didn't know the music, I really, really enjoyed it. Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because one of the things that we try and do at Expat in Croatia is help people who are not from here assimilate into the community. And there are lots of ways that you can assimilate into the community, okay? Learning the language is obviously one of those things. Now, another way is to go to concerts. You know, I think a lot of the times we kind of gravitate towards music that we know and we're familiar with, but you know, you can go to these concerts here and they're not that much money. You know, it's not like seeing Taylor Swift or Beyonce. So it's a lot more affordable. And even if you don't understand Croatian, you don't know the words, you can still be around Croatians. You can, you know, hear music that they love. You can see them loving it. You can mix, you can mingle, you can meet people. And that's part of assimilation as well. And I gotta say, like, I danced my heart out. So I had a great time. And if you're in the Split area, there's another opportunity to go see a band here. This was an artist with a backup band. Actually had like 12 people in his band? But anyways, there's a band, an old school band that's going to be playing on August 31st at Porat Open Air, which is like a new venue in Split called Bielo Dugme. So it's all the original members for those of you who know who Bielo Dugme is, but I will be there. So you might see me in the crowd. So I really encourage you to go to cultural events, to music events, even if you are not familiar with the musician or the artist. It's such a great way to learn about Croatian culture, be amongst Croatians, and do what they do. So that's it, guys. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get into the questions now. If you're just joining us, this is 5 Question Friday. I'm Sarah of Expat in Croatia, and I'm going to answer 5 questions about Croatia. All right? And if you have any questions that just sprout to mind, feel free to drop them in the comments and I'll answer them for you. Okay, so this first one comes from Maria on the 5 Question Friday form. Can I bring homemade rakija to the U.S. and in particular states that have a liquor control board? Okay, so this is tough. We specialize in Croatia, not America, but I will tell you what I found. So each state has their own rules. That's the thing about America, states' rights. So there are certain things that are governed by the federal government. There are certain things that are governed by the states. Import of alcohol is governed by the states. Now, generally speaking, the usual limit is 1 liter of alcohol, okay? There's nothing necessarily specified on whether it has to be homemade or not. That's something you need to check with the individual state where you are going to be landing, and therefore importing that amount. Now, anything above the limit, whether the state limit is 1 liter or 2 liters or whatever it is, would be subject to duties and a custom tax. Also, you cannot mail alcohol into the states from abroad. That's important to understand. Because I think sometimes people want to mail stuff over there because it's easier than taking it on a plane. You can't do that. Okay? So I do have a link to a U.S. government website, so you can see these rules in more detail. But again, you need to go to the individual states. So if you would like that link, if you're on YouTube, it's down below in the caption. If you're on Instagram, send us a DM and we'll get that over to you. Okay, our next question comes from Claire on the 5 Question Friday forum. I'm moving to Croatia in January, February timeframe and have flexibility as to which town or city I will choose to live. Among my targeted areas are Zagreb, Opatija, Rijeka, and Rovinj. Of these places, is there one location that might prove to be quicker when applying first for residence based on ancestry and then citizenship? Any suggestions? Okay, so generally speaking, whenever you're applying for residence or citizenship, it doesn't matter which, there is a certain amount of processing that happens at the local level, at the local MUP station. And then there's the main processing that happens at MUP in Zagreb, okay? So there's only so much you can quicken a process by choosing which MUP station you're going to go to. And you can only go to the MUP station, you can only go to the administrative MUP station in the jurisdiction, municipality where you are living. It is based on residence. Like you can't live in Rijeka and go to the Kula police station to handle your paperwork. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. Which jurisdictions are faster? So first, let's talk about which ones are slower. The bigger ones. Zagreb, by far the worst. I'm not saying don't. All right, let me take a pause. For those of you who've only started recently watching 5 Question Friday, bugs love me. They want to crawl in every single hole on my body, into my eyeballs, into my nose, into my mouth, into my ears. It's frustrating. So I'm probably going to be swatting at things throughout this episode today. Okay, let's get back to it. Hey, Kathy, welcome. Oh, and Mark joined too. Hey, Mark. Okay, so Zagreb by far is the worst, and that the reason is because they have the highest volume of permits that they are processing, okay? They've tried to make a lot of improvements, and it has improved the speed, but at the end of the day, they have the highest volume, so you're going to be waiting in the longest line, figuratively speaking, okay? Split would be the second longest line, although, again, they've made a lot of improvements, but still, there's a high volume of people moving to Split. She also mentioned Rijeka and Rovinj and Opatia. So Opatia and Rovinj, those are the smallest towns that you mentioned, so they're going to have the shortest lines, shortest processing times. Generally speaking, the smaller the place you go, the quicker they can do the local processing for you. That being said, that can also backfire if you go to too small of a općina. Općina means municipality. So when you are in a city, okay, like Split is governed by one administrative police station, but you have some towns that are governed by, like multiple towns are governed by one općina, one municipality, one administrative police station. So it all depends on how small your town is, whether or not it actually is going to have an admin police station. Okay, so that's important to understand. So if you go to too small of a police station, why is that a problem? That is a problem because they don't process as much, so they're not as familiar with the rules and the requirements, because the way that MUP processes things tends to evolve over time. You know, you have the law, then you have the way that they interpret the law, and that interpretation changes over time. I will give you 2 great examples, okay, related to digital nomads, okay? So, and I have a citizenship example. Okay, I have 3 examples. All right, first, digital nomads. So, if you require a visa to enter Croatia, you are supposed to be applying abroad for residence through a consulate. Okay? The only in writing in the law exception to this is if you are married to an EU or EEA citizen. That includes Croatian citizens, at which case you can cross the border and get a visa on arrival. Everybody else has to apply abroad. Okay? Now, there has been something that they have started allowing at a certain point off the books, that if you require a visa to enter and you are a digital nomad, you can apply from within Croatia as long as you have a visa to enter Croatia. Now, we don't openly recommend doing that because it's a risk, because it's not in the law, because it's not in the rule book, which is something that accompanies the law that tells the police stations how they should interpret the law. There's no guarantee that the person you speak to at MUP is going to recognize that practice. Okay? Second digital nomad example is what I've mentioned recently. A few times I've mentioned it this year. They're planning a change to law and foreigners that says that you can't switch from digital nomad to family reunification with a digital nomad to other purposes and all in between. Okay? So they haven't passed that law yet. However, they are already enforcing it, even though it's not officially written down in the law or the rule book just yet. That is another example. Here's a citizenship example. Again, to remind you, what we are talking about is how MUP changes their interpretation of the law over time. A great citizenship example is when they first changed the Citizenship Act in 2020 to open it up to more Croatian diaspora. They said that if you are a descendant of a Croatian immigrant, you can apply for citizenship, but your spouse has to wait until you get citizenship. But then, over time, after a couple of years, they said, no, that's not necessary. They can apply at the same time. So that is another way that they changed the interpretation. Now, that being said, there are some consulates that still dig their heels in and say you have to wait until your spouse gets it, which is really unfair because, quite frankly, they're not allowed to make that decision because they're not processing applications. The consulates are under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, while the Ministry of the Interior is the one that actually processes citizenship. So, to circle back to the original question about which cities are the fastest in terms of residence and citizenship, the smaller the city, the better, but don't go too small because they just don't have all the information. Ooh, I have one more example. I promise we'll move on. I remember, I don't know how long ago it was, at least 4 or 5 years maybe. The Rijeka police station said that they had never heard that you could not apply for residence based on prepayment of rent, but you could. It wasn't as common a program there, and we didn't have quite as many foreigners coming into Croatia to live here then as we do now. Obviously, with the digital nomad permit, it's just the numbers have skyrocketed. But back then, I'd say we only knew about the program for maybe about a year, which, by the way, prepayment of rent is not in the law on foreigners. It isn't. Other purposes is, but it doesn't strictly say prepayment of rent. So, Croatia's system has a lot of nuance. If it didn't, this wouldn't be my job. So I hope that helps clear it up, Claire. So we do have a guide that we can provide you. This is how to find police stations in Croatia and what they do. And whenever you need to do a procedure like residence or citizenship or get a driver's license or a permit of some kind, it's always through an administrative police station. So we have a link to that also includes a link to the list of police stations. So if you would like that, if you're on YouTube, it's down below. If you're on Instagram, send us a DM. Okay, this next question, this was one of my consulting clients. They are anonymous. I've heard in chats that getting a home loan depends heavily on the specific branch and banker, and moving further inland from the coast to less popular towns could offer better conditions. Is that true? No, it isn't. So I would love to give credit to my colleague Tamara, who used to be in banking for many, many, many years. So I would like to share with you what she said, okay? So loan rates and other conditions are determined by the policy of the bank in general, and they cannot be different if the branch of the bank is situated on the coast or inland. The bank's policy may be different only in accepting the cost of real estate as price per square meter, which differs wildly across the country. The most important factor for the bank is the loan capacity of the client, which is considered per the same policy across the branches. There are small local banks without brand recognition of big banks that sometimes give better terms because they are more in need of new customers. The Croatian market is small, so banks only have so many customers to draw on. So the last point that I would like to make is, and also actually this came from Tamara too, just in a separate conversation many months ago, if you have a substantial amount of money flowing through their bank in the hundreds of thousands at a minimum, then that can have an impact in certain situations as this relates to your loan capacity. So in my experience and those of my network and my clients, being an existing client of a bank doesn't necessarily give you an advantage either. So I'll give you an example from when I obtained my home loan, okay? Oh, hey, Logan, welcome. Okay, so when I was seeking my home loan, I was with PBZ. Okay, I had PBZ for years and years and years. It seemed like that's what everybody had, so I just went with PBZ. I really didn't have any forethought about it, okay? So that's where I had my personal account. That's where I had my business, the Expat in Croatia's bank account. Then when I went to them to get a home loan, they would only consider Croatian income, Croatian salary. And the amount that they would give me would barely buy a garage in Split. And that was it. It was like, take it or leave it. Okay. So I guess the last 8 years it meant nothing. Actually, it's been longer. It would have been 9 years at that point. So I went to Ersta, and they considered foreign income in addition to my Croatian salary. And they worked with me on it. And so I moved over to Ersta. That was a condition. Well, Ersta didn't require that I cancel my accounts with PBZ, but they said you do have to open up a personal bank account at our bank. and have your salary deposited here. That was a condition of the loan. Fine. So I did. I moved Expat in Croatia over. I moved my personal over. I closed PBZ, and I got a really favorable interest rate that you can't get now. So I'm really grateful I did it when I did it. So yeah, so history with the bank, just because you have a bank account doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get more favorable terms. But if you have a lot of money flowing through their bank, then yes, that could have an impact on that situation. Okay? All right. So we have a few guides that would be helpful in this situation. The biggest banks in Croatia, and this will go over, the services, prices, all that kind of stuff, how to get a home loan in Croatia, 10 things to know about getting a home loan in Croatia, and also we did a deep dive on 15 different banks in Croatia and who they will consider for loans, because there are some banks that will only consider Croatian citizens, some will only consider Croatian and EU citizens, some will only consider Croatian income, and some, those are the best ones, will consider third country nationals that have foreign income. So those are very few and far between. But we do also have that guide. So if you're on YouTube, all of those links are down below. If you're on Instagram, send us a DM. Okay. Now, this brings us to our lawyer tip of the week. Dun, da, da, da. Jazzes. All right. Croatia appreciates active participation in litigation. The court doesn't like absence from the process. Show up to all of your hearings. Coordinate with your lawyer in a timely fashion. Make sure you give power attorney for someone to receive your mail from the court, whether it be your lawyer or to another person if you are representing yourself and you are not in Croatia to receive it. Also, don't represent yourself. If you or your lawyers don't come to the first court appointment, the lawsuit is considered canceled. Croatia does have a statute of limitations that can vary, so do not miss your window. Always respond to the court and your lawyer promptly and be active throughout the process. Your lawyer should explain the system, the procedure, and what is expected of you from the start so you know what to expect. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I mentioned this, I think, a few 5-question Fridays ago. I'm in my own litigation, and I can't tell you much about it because it's still ongoing. I think it's been going on for 2 or 3 years. I think I've been waiting for a hearing. But, when it was at the very start of it, when there's a lot going on, like you always have to fulfill whatever request your lawyer has, whether it's what they need to be able to support you and defend you or be proactive or whatever the court is asking for. Don't make anybody wait in this process, okay? Especially if you are abroad. If you can't be here for the litigation and for some reason you're in a lawsuit and you don't live in Croatia, extra reason to really be vigilant and stay on top of it. So one thing I would also let you know is e-građani. I feel like I talked about this recently. E-građani is this magnificent government services portal that Croatia has. And I said that to Croatian recently, and they were like, wait, what? Yes. It has gotten so good over the years. There's so many things that you can do and access inside of this system. Anyone who is a resident can access it. If you own property but you don't have residence, you can access it. You just need to have an OIB and a method of access. There's a million different ways you can access it. I access it using my Erste bank account. And before that, PBZ. Why did I bring this up? Oh, yeah, because you can see messages from the court within the e-građani, which is pretty neat. And while we're on the topic, I want to tell you something else about e-građani because I used it this week because I had my blend drawn. See this terrible? They did not do a good job. Well, it was a trainee. I don't want to condemn anyone in particular, but yeah, I had a trainee on this arm. So then I got a seasoned nurse on this arm. Anyways, they processed the blood test in a couple of hours, and I was able to see it on e-građani. I didn't have to wait for my doctor to send it to me, so I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, we do have a guide on agragyny. I didn't think about the fact that I would be mentioning it, so it's not in the YouTube description. So if you would like it, then send us a message, drop a comment on YouTube, and I will add it to the description. And if you are on Instagram, then just send us a DM. So we have some comments, and I just want to scroll through them right now to make sure I don't miss anything. From Krieger2958, you're extremely informative, enthralling, and entertaining. Ooh, yay! I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you. Thank you so much for the compliment. Thank you for being here. Dark Matter Within, here in Croatia eventually. I'm actually staying here in Croatia for 2 months. Ooh, wonderful. Where are you at in Croatia? I hope you're enjoying it. How's it going so far? Also, I've been having trouble finding a job here in Croatia. I have experience in cybersecurity and IT. I've been applying to multiple companies here, but no luck. I'm from America and I want to be able to live. Yeah, it can be tough. I would say cybersecurity and IT is going to be one of the easier industries to get a job in when you don't speak Croatian. Zagreb is going to be the place where there's going to be the most opportunities. Definitely continue to target companies. As it sounds like you have been. We do have a job guide that has a lot of good advice and all of the websites where you can go and find jobs. If you would like that, send us a DM and we can get that over to you. Or if you just type "find jobs Croatia" into Google, I think we're the first link if you'd like it a little bit faster than that. Oh, hey, Dushko. Rox is here. Hey, Rox. Okay, Kathy, temporary residence expires September 6th, heading to the UK and US for 90 plus days. And of course, returning to Croatia. Do I need to face with HZZO before I exit? So your HZZO will automatically expire at the end of your temporary residence term. So no, you don't need to. But make sure that when you return and you get residence again, that you sign up for HZZO within 30 days. That way you can avoid paying the 12 months of back pay again. Okay, let me scroll back down. Abbey Road, like the handle. Do permanent residents get Croatian benefits or only citizens? It depends on what we're talking about. So if you're a permanent or a long-term resident, let me make sure I clarify so there's no confusion. Permanent residence only applies to spouses of or family members of Croatian citizens. Everyone else can get long-term residence. So I have long-term residence, which I've had, I guess, 5 years now. So in terms of the benefits, you no longer have to apply for residence ever again. I gotta tell you, I really dug that. You can freely work just like a Croatian citizen can. So you don't need a work permit. You inherently have the right to work, which is amazing. So that is how I was able to... No, that's not a right statement. I'm not going to finish that statement. So I can freely open companies. If I don't know, all of this falls to the ground and I have to go work for somebody else, I could do that without a work permit. So that is one benefit that you have that's similar to a Croatian citizen. What else? So there are child benefits that you can get if you have children, and you have to be a permanent resident to be able to access those. There might... No, I'm not going to speculate on that. So there are a few benefits. We do have a guide on the rights of permanent long-term residents. If you would like that, send us a DM or go to expatinCroatia.com. It'll go into those rights in more detail, and it will also talk about the difference in rights for third country national permanent long-term residents versus EU long-term and permanent residents versus permanent residents who are the spouses of Croatian citizens, because the rights vary a little bit between those different situations. But I would say those are the three major benefits. You can work freely, which is amazing. You don't have to apply for residence ever again, which is amazing. And if you have kids, you can access the child services. And just to make it clear, because this is a question that we get often, is if you are a Croatian citizen and you move to Croatia and like 6 months later you have a baby, you do not qualify for child benefits. The government has a different kind of permanent residence status for Croatian citizens. So in that case, you have to be living in Croatia for at least 3 years to get access to those kinds of benefits. They don't just hand them out once you get here, even if you're a Croatian citizen, which, from my perspective, feels fair, because those benefits are paid from the state budget, and if you have not paid into that budget, then how fair is that? You know, that's why when you sign up for HZZO for health insurance for the very first time, they ask you to pay 12 months of back pay. It's because you haven't paid anything into the system, but you're immediately covered. So if the next day you get hit by a car, or you give birth, or you have some kind of emergency, or you just need to go to the doctor, or need a diagnostic, all of that's already is covered, even though you haven't paid anything into the system. So I know that back pay upsets a lot of people, but that is the reason they ask you to do it. It's a heavily subsidized system, so we have to be understanding about that. Okay? All right, I'm not going to go off on a tangent about that. I've already done that enough. Okay. And just as an added thing, we have guides on how to transition to permanent residence, how to apply for permanent or long-term residence if you are a spouse of a Croatian, third country national, EU citizen. We have guides for all of those. So just send us a DM or drop us a comment on YouTube if you'd like to see any of those. Okay, so our next question comes from Ella on the 5 Question Friday forum. Nationality in question is Colombian. I really appreciate you setting that detail from the very beginning, Ella. I'm asking this for a friend who is currently doing the tourist season in Trogir. Her contract with the company expires by the end of October, but she wants to stay working in the country indefinitely. I understand that. How much time exactly does she have before finding another job that will help her stay in Croatia? That is, how much time can she spend legally without a job in Croatia after her work contract expires? So I would like to make an assumption based on the context clues in this message that her friend, Ella's friend, is on a seasonal permit, seasonal working permit, okay? And that's going to make sense later why I'm pointing out that detail. So when your work permit expires, there is no grace period. Not right now. They have made a proposal to change the law on foreigners that would introduce a grace period. But if they pass that, we're expecting them to pass it. But if they pass it, the earliest that would be activated would be January 1st, 2025. Okay? But for now, there is no grace period. So that means that when your permit ends, you got to go. Now, you can switch to a you can switch to a tourist stay at the end of your residence permit, no matter what basis it is, whether it's work or digital nomad or other purposes, okay? But to do that, usually MOP requires that you leave for a day and come back, and then you have to register as a tourist, during which you can stay as a tourist for, 90 days. Now, that is if you have not been in the Schengen zone outside Croatia in the previous 90 days. So if you went to Italy for 2 weeks in your last month on your permit, then you don't have 90 days. You have 90 days less 2 weeks to be on a tourist stay, okay? So that is the time that she could use to go and look for another job. Now, here's something else you consider. And that is why I brought up or made the point that she's probably on a seasonal work permit. When you are applying for permanent or long-term residence, you have to have 5 years of continuous qualified stay. Continuous means there are no breaks in between your permits. And qualified stay means that you have to have 5 years of residence on a basis which qualifies. And not all bases qualify for permanent or long-term residence. Work permits count, digital nomad counts, seasonal work permits do not count. Other purposes does not count, okay? So the time that she's already spent on her seasonal work permit does not count towards long-term residence. So I wouldn't worry about not having a break in between that permit and a new permit based on a new job. I would just switch to a tourist stay. That's going to be the easiest way to give her the maximum amount of time to find a new job. That being said, there may be some people out there who who are on an actual like standard work and residence permit or a blue card, and they want to make sure that they have a seamless transition to the next work permit so that they can start accumulating that 5 years. What do you do in that situation? So in that situation, you need to find a new job before you leave your other job, because you want to make sure that you can try and coordinate so that the day that your employer notifies MUP that your contract has ended or that your work permit ends naturally, that you have your new employer submit an application for your new work permit the same day. That way those things happen back to back and you don't have any break in between. And you can continue to accumulate continuous time. I hope that made sense. Let me know if it didn't. Hi, Cam. Cam's here. Okay. So, as far as guides I can send. Oh, how to find a job in Croatia. I forgot we were promoting that today. So yeah, if you're on Instagram, you can send us a DM. If you are on YouTube, it's down in the description. We also have guides on work permits as well, on what that process looks like, blue card, all that stuff as well. Okay, this is our last question, and you know what? I didn't put whose question this was. I'm sorry about that, whoever you are. So I hope that you will recognize, oh, sorry, got a little burpy there for a second. Punk Rock Biscuit. I love that name. I love that name. All right, so my friend is Croatian born, living in London, and she would like to get her 11-year-old daughter her ID this summer, citizenship this summer. Is it true that she needs to get a letter from the daughter's dad agreeing to it? How does one go around this if they were never married, no longer have contact with the dad, and is for all intents and purposes a single parent? Thought if anyone would know, it might be you and your team. I do. I did speak to one of our lawyers about it, though, because I wanted to make sure that I had all the information. Stay put. Croatia does not recognize full custody. They only consider the parent they live with, the parent they see on weekends, and the parent that pays child support. So parental rights are only revoked in Croatia when a child is in danger, as determined by the Center za socijalnu skrb, which is the social services center, or if another parent reports the other. Additionally, for a foreign court decision to be recognized, it must be legalized. However, you cannot legalize a foreign court decision if the parties are not Croatian. So, in practice, consulates are still requiring for both parents to appear for a child's application for citizenship. Now, that being said, each custody situation depends on a lot of factors, including the nationality of the child, the residence of the child, and where the court decision is from. So for this situation, you've got to have a lawyer check it out, because no two situations are alike. Last week, if you missed last week's episode, the lawyer tip of the week was focused on how if there is a party in your situation that is foreign, or if you have a court decision from a foreign country, or you have like a will from a foreign country, then it introduces complexity because it's no longer just Croatian law that applies to the situation. So in this case, she has a friend living in London. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the custody decision came from the UK. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But that introduces another country because of the custody decision. It introduces another country because the child is not a Croatian citizen. If the parent is not a Croatian citizen, which they may not necessarily be, just because the child qualifies doesn't mean the parent has actually gotten it. It could be the grandparent or great grandparent that has citizenship. I've seen cases like that where the parent's like, I don't need to do this, but I would like to do this for my kid. Okay? So in a custody situation, when you're trying to get citizenship or residence for that matter, because it requires permission from both parents, make sure you consult with a lawyer about it. Okay? So if you would like to speak to a vetted lawyer that we have vetted in our network, then send us a DM and we can help you with that. And if you want to find out how to register a child for citizenship, this is for minors. We have a guide specifically for minor children, so we can send that to you as well. And if you're on YouTube, they're down below. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for being here with me at Turska Kula under the shade of the pine trees with the cicadas singing out their melody today. I hope you've had a good week. I don't know what's going on next week, but I'll tell you next Friday. I'll be in Split next Friday, I believe. So I hope to see you then. Hey, Jerome. So yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much again for being here. Really glad I got to keep you company today. And if you're watching this on Saturday morning, good morning. That's all. Bye. Vidimose. Ciao.